Rainey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. And, on the TV show, we focus in on the quarterbacks because, the draft is generally defined by those guys, and I get it. But I think it's worth pointing out again that this is not a year where the quarterbacks are in the center of the action. Because of their position, several of them will likely be drafted, perhaps, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, higher than they should be. This is a draft that is very deep in a lot of other places, but not at the quarterback position. Yes?
That's fair. It really is. And we've said it before, if you take this year's class and compare it to last year's, where we had 5 quarterbacks taken in the top 15, Mac Jones being the 5th quarterback taken to the Patriots at 15, I think the first quarterback off the board, if you were to combine both years' classes, would be the 6th quarterback. So it's not comparable when you're looking at last year to this year. But there are still quarterbacks that can come in and have success in the league. Kenny Pickett from Pittsburgh has 50 starts in college. He's the most NFL ready. And if you want a guy who can come in and you can compete with him, like a Mac Jones did last year, I'm not saying he has Mac Jones, upside, but I do think he's similar in terms of maneuverability inside the pocket and pocket presence, processing, going through his reads, and then the accuracy throwing the ball on all 3 levels. If you're looking for that kind of guy who's not going to be a runner and not dynamic, then Pickett's your quarterback in this class. Malik Willis from Liberty is kind of the exact opposite. He's got a lot to learn and developing to do. And as Hugh Freeze said, his head coach at Liberty, he doesn't know what he doesn't know yet. And so it's going to be a learning curve and a transition for him. But in the meantime, because he's such a dynamic athlete and he's so explosive, he can get himself out of mistakes that a lot of other quarterbacks can't, and he has the biggest arm of all the quarterbacks. And if you just put together a highlight reel of his throws off balance, off platform, on the move, arm angles all over the place, I mean, you draft him number 1 overall. The problem is he's got to become more efficient inside the pocket. So those, to me, Pickett and Willis are the top 2 quarterbacks in this class. But if you're being honest with yourself, they're mid-first round guys. They're not in the top 10, and we'll see if ultimately a team like the Panthers at 6, Falcons at 8, Broncos at 9 wind up reaching, if you will, to grab one of those quarterbacks.
Greeny and McShay. So then let's talk about, because here we can get a little more into the nitty-gritty, and we got the real hardcore fans here who are getting ready for this. So if you're a fan, whose team is picking up in that first group of the draft, Jaguars, Lions, Texans, Jets, Giants, that group, what positions should those fans be looking to? Where are the top players? What positions do the very best players in this draft play?
You've got to love the offensive tackle position at the top of the draft. I've got Evan Neal going to the Jaguars at number 1 overall from Alabama. He's a monster of a man, 360-plus pounds, and he can move, and he'll protect your quarterback's blind side. Ikem Ekwonu from North Carolina State is the most physically dominating offensive lineman in this class. I've got him going number 4 to the Jets, and he's just a tone setter. And he's also very good in pass protection. And, so you got 2 guys right there in the top 4. And then I had Charles Cross going number 7 overall coming out of Mississippi State. I think he's probably the most NFL ready in terms of pass protection, but he's still kind of developing his all-around game. So those are the 3 offensive tackles you'll hear mentioned in the top 10. Defensive end, and that's the beauty, and that's kind of why I love coming on your show. We can dive into this a little bit. Mm-hmm. If you're not drafting a quarterback, let's look at positional need. To me, it's you've got to have guys that can get after the quarterback. Who are the best pass rushers? That's the second most important position, and this draft is loaded with pass rushers. You've got defensive backs. I think you got to be able to cover these wide receivers, and this class is loaded as well. You've got Sauce Gardner, I had to go number 6 out of Cincinnati to the Panthers. You've got Derek Stingley. If you evaluate his 2019 tape, he could be in the mix in the top 3 overall. He just had some injuries the last couple of years. So the cornerbacks are there, the pass rushers are there, and the offensive tackles are there. And that to me is why it's a really good draft. We just don't have the quarterback, so it's not a sexy draft when you start talking about television and selling the product.
Yeah, and we'll be doing it on TV at the end of April, and these teams are going to get remade one way or the other. Greeny and McShay, who's with us here, another position, and as I have been starting, I've now done almost every player that was in Mel's first round of his last mock draft, and I'll dive into the rest of yours probably the end of this week. There's quite a few wide receivers that I like here, too. And we saw the enormous success of Jamar Chase this past year. I don't know if any of these guys are him, but there are quite a few wide receivers. I didn't count how many you have in here, but probably, 5, 6 receivers to go in the first round?
Yeah, and just look at the last few years, Greeny. Wide receiver used to be kind of hit and miss in the first round.
Right.
You mentioned Jamar Chase, like Jalen Waddle, the impact that he had, Devontae Smith. I mean, these guys are coming in and making immediate impacts. And this year's class, it may not have the guy in the top 3, 4, 5, but I think the depth of this class is as good as any group we've seen in the last 5 years. And that's saying a lot because we've gotten lucky. We've been on a great run with wide receivers coming out of the college ranks. And so, yeah, I have Drake London from USC going as the first receiver. I've got him going to the Falcons at number 8. They obviously, with Calvin Ridley's situation, they need another receiver and to kind of match up with Kyle Pitts, who is a star as a rookie tight end. And London's 6'5", basketball background, number 1 player in the country this past year on contested catches. After that, you've got Garrett Wilson, who's great when the ball's in the air, just adjusting to the football and can be a vertical threat coming out of Ohio State. I've got him going 13 to the Browns. After that, you look at Treylon Burks, who's a big physical receiver out of Arkansas, really good after the catch, and he's a huge mismatch in the slot. He loves playing in that slot where he can kind of take advantage going against inside guys, and really good, as I mentioned, with the ball in his hands for such a big receiver over 6'3". Then after that, Chris Olave, who's a burner and a smooth route runner from Ohio State. Jamison Williams from Alabama, who I think would be the number 1 receiver in this class had he not suffered the injury in the national championship game. Mm-hmm. I mean, his speed is different. You just put on the tape. It's not just the vertical speed, which is sensational. I mean, you're talking about SEC defensive backs when the ball's in the air. He's 3 yards in front of a defensive back and then becomes 3 yards behind him in that split second when the ball goes up in the air. But also after the catch, he's so explosive. I've got him going 27 to the Buccaneers because of that injury. He falls a little bit.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.